Yeah.
Hello, welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and pivoting raiders to that 6+++ show. I am your host, Tom. I'm back once again with my 6++ 40k teammates to talk all things Warhammer 40,000 for you. And today we're talking terrain packs, we're talking new missions, because we in the UK have got a very spicy new update to our sort of national circuit pack in the UKTC. And I know there's a bunch of people going to Sheffield this very weekend coming, myself included, who might want to have a little think about how to play this and get the most out of your army on this new set of terrain. So that's what we're going to be doing in our main segment today. But before that, we've got a few bits of news, bit of roundup, bit of promotion, and I will, of course, introduce my cast of players, starting where I always like to start, with my dear leader, Chris. Chris, how are you doing, mate?
All right, thanks. I have got a slight niggling cold going on at the moment.
Oh, no.
You know, when you used to be like slightly sore throat, slightly phlegmy, and you're just like, I really don't want this to build up nicely for the weekend. That'd be less than ideal. But,
Yeah, that'd be rubbish. And then don't give it to us, please. I don't want to get like tournament flu. I could do without it. I could really do without it. And Chris,
I think where everyone
yeah,
got ill.
yeah, absolutely. I've had ones coming back a couple of times. It's just an inevitable consequence of putting that many people in a room from all around the country, isn't it? I've got a question, and I know there's a good answer to this because I've seen evidence. Have you done any hobby lately?
Well, Thomas, don't mean to alarm everyone, but I have. For the first time in 2 months, I have picked up a paintbrush. Very exciting. When I was building my list for Sheffield this weekend, there were a few front runners and they all needed painting. So I was like, which is the thing I wouldn't mind painting? And a rhino was one I didn't want to paint. I couldn't be bothered to get the airbrush out. So instead, got this little chappy here, podcast viewers have no idea what's going on right now, but it is an Eversaw
He's
assassin
such a cool little guy, the Eversaw.
with Sotek blue, of course, or green even.
Looking beautiful.
Just all the Sotek, but yeah. So I'm breaking out double assassin.
I like it. It's quite a useful little guy, as we'll probably get into during this this session today, because there's a number of roles he can fulfill these days. Which is
he's infantry and he moves quite fast.
He moves quickly, yeah. Not to give anything away, guys, but infantry that moves quick is in a very nice spot right now. I am, of course, also joined by the lovely Lewis. Lewis, how are you doing?
Good evening, Tom. I am very well, thank you. I don't know about anybody else, but I always tune into 6++ to understand Chris's phlegm state from his very
it's important.
That's why it's the first thing that I mentioned.
Yeah, it's good. People are waiting with bated breath for that kind of information. It's crucial, absolutely crucial. How's your phlegm state, Lewis?
My phlegm state's good. I'm healthy as anything at the moment.
Oh, amazing!
So I'm hoping whatever you had didn't come across to me at the weekend, Chris. So,
hopefully not. And of Lewis, have you done any hobby at all, mate?
I have, actually, and it's been a little bit while since I've been on the show, so much to report. So
tell us everything for the last 5 months
of content. No, I did want to give us a little shout out for the Saffron Walden Warhammer Club, which is now up and running.
Amazing.
Every other week in a pub in Saffron Walden, we have beers and Warhammer, and what could be better in life? So,
well, you're the only Saffron Walden club, aren't you? The premium one.
So. Yeah, sole and undisputed.
Someone else is running events in Saffron Walden. They didn't tell me.
Oh no!
I'm not upset about it at all.
No, it's fine. That's good. We all deal really well with minor slights in this team. And so, what in the last few months have you been doing other than getting this club up and running, which is amazing? It sounds like a lot of fun. Have you built up any models, any armies? Are there any game systems perhaps that might have had more of your attention than others?
Yeah, Roy, you can tell from my background, I am in Sylvania, and the vampire count host is growing rapidly.
Yeah, very, very nice.
We're almost 1,300 points of vampires painted.
Exciting.
Got a square base GT booked in. I've got the LGT booked in for Old World. And we have the Saffron Fantasy Slam this weekend. So very exciting. Old World event, which I'm really excited for. But it has been good to build up some square base models. Actually, putting blocks of infantry together is a sight to behold. But I have been playing some 40k as well, Tom. So
excellent.
40k has been happening. We're going to call it training. When in reality, it's actually mostly me just punching Sam in the head, one of our local players.
Oh, nice.
He's a Blood Angels player. Nice. He said to me, I would like to get better at playing Blood Angels. I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's play some hard games then. And took my tournament towel list, and have been every single week at the Warhammer Club, just smashing his face in. But
good.
we are getting to the point where I'm smashing his face in ever so slightly less than I was before, and he has now gone to an RTT and won the bloody thing.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that uphill training is the one. Absolutely.
Indeed. I'm not a teacher as you guys are, and so I have no ability to actually teach anyone anything. So I just kind of show and then see what happens. But we're going to plan him this week with the Tyranids. So going to go from a shooting list into the Horde. So we'll see how his Blood Angels fare against the Swarm. So we'll see how we go.
Fantastic. No, very exciting. Very exciting. I think losing a lot is a very good way to rapidly improve in general. I think it's very good. And for my part, I have built some of the new mandrakes. I'll be painting them tomorrow, so hopefully get some pictures up for Work in Progress Wednesdays with any luck. They're lovely, lovely models. It's going to be nice to have the new ones as a plug into my Drakari army. And then I've just played a lot of Pariah Nexus. There's been a lot of Pariah Nexus.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you've gone, I don't really know anything about Pariah Nexus, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Tom's on Discord playing TTS. Oh, Tom's
and so there's a question in our Discord about how much Warhammer to play and how much to think about it. And I think the answer is either do it or don't do it. That's very much how I interact with it. So I had a couple of weeks where I was like, I don't really understand this. And now I've played 7 or 8 games in a very short space of time and feel like I'm starting to get there with it, which is great. It's a really cool pack. I like it a lot. I think the missions are awesome. Good, tough, close games. I think the new secondaries are very cool, but we'll come into that in a little bit. And I've got to have a front row seat to the England team preparation as well, which is frankly it's been very interesting to watch, and it's very cool to actually get a sense of how that works and what that looks like.
Give us your secrets, Tom. Give us your secrets.
Sadly, I can give you absolutely no secrets. I'm a consummate professional, and I wouldn't even know what I was looking at if I told you. So, right, we're going to move it through to a little promo section now. We're going to save telling you what all the stuff's coming out on the channel till the end because we think we've got to keep this as brief in the intros as we can. But what we are going to do is do a little shout out for a couple of events, one that has just been run and one that is later to come. So I'm going to take it away. Give it over to Chris for talking about Bootcamp Plus and let him just give you a general sense of what was a very special weekend, I think, for us as a team.
Absolutely. So over a cheeky pint last year, Tom and I came up with the idea that we would love to run some sort of like training workshop module type thing. And inevitably did absolutely nothing about it. And then this year I met up with Lewis for a cheeky pint, and Lewis likes to organise things.
He does.
So it was a meeting of the minds, and what ended up happening was this Saturday we headed over to, I'd love to say sunny Saffron Walden, but it pissed it down.
It was raining.
And we hung out in some fancy building whilst the wedding went on up above us, and we taught 9 lovely, lovely folk what we think is how to play good Warhammer in 3 different modules. So we had a module on deployment, we had a module on planning your turn, and we had a module on the charge phase. They all ran about an hour and a half, 2 hours long. Lots of like little activities and that sort of thing. And then at the end, they got to play a match into each other because you could see they were gagging for it. Like in the first module, we did the deployment one, and we Tom talked through all the different things for deployment. They go into 2 teams of 5 and spent ages discussing the different deployment, and then we were like, right. Now we're going to stop.
Now none of this matters. Put it all away.
And they just had such blue balls, didn't they? So
they were all devastated. They wanted that first turn roll off in a big way.
Yeah, but yeah, genuinely, like it was such a great day. We had 9 people who were just so interested. Like that. Obviously, Tom and I do teaching on a daily basis. I don't know about Tom, but I mean, my 10-year-olds in my class don't necessarily always pay attention. I'm always the most invested in what I'm teaching them. But these guys and girls were just so interested. Loads of questions. They took on board a lot. It was a lot of information thrown at them. But and we've did a feedback form. Lots of wonderful feedback from them all. Everyone had a great time, it seems. So we're definitely going to be doing more in the future. We've already worked out a ton of ways of how just to refine it. This is our first time. It was a bit of a thought experiment. Done our first one. We can now refine it to make it even better. And then we're also going to be thinking about what other things we could include and redo. But yeah, that was it's a bit of a gap in the market, I think. I know Vanguard Tactics do something occasionally before like big tournaments, like they got one the day before LGT and that sort of thing. But I know Clumsy Orc Studios up north do kind of like regular weekday stuff. But especially in our area, we think it's a bit of an opportunity really to try
Completely.
and work people. And we had people there who were taking strong lists and looking to push themselves, and we also had people who didn't even know what CP was.
Yes,
so,
it was a real mix.
It was a real mix. So yeah, that was great fun.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I want to shout out Nella, who I unexpectedly played because I went there not intending to play, but then we had one person who was unable to attend at the last minute, which meant I stepped in with the Drakari and played against Nella, and she had Penitent Host Sisters, and it was murderous. It was extremely violent. It was a very, very fun, very silly, very competitive game. So I really enjoyed that. And yeah, it was a really good crowd, as you say. And I think it was just, it sort of ended up feeling a bit like an event, but with a bit of a run up almost. They kind of got to the games at the end, but it felt like there was a real grounding and figuring out and getting a sense of people at the start. And I think we learned an awful lot about how we'll improve even more on it next time, right?
I definitely found it very interesting that not a single person in the room, and that includes our dear leader Chris and Tom, knew the order of the charge phase.
No, we didn't get tested on that. We didn't know the dice roll percentage.
You did get tested on the charge
but
phase.
I can confirm I did not know the order of the charge phase either. People who played me in early 10th can confirm whenever it got to the charge phase, I just sort of went, can you do this? I want nothing to do with this. I hate this. It's confusing. I don't understand it. It's not the same anymore. And I'm a bit better now, but only a bit better.
And a shout out to Harry as well for the excellent death animation being overwatched.
Yeah, we did some full-scale human charge phases, and Harry got killed on Overwatch and performed admirably.
Will be released soon.
Yes, as you can imagine, the human charge phase was as much carnage as you expected it to be.
Yeah,
and very much made use of the primary school hula hoops. So
completely, yeah. But what having done it, I think I can have full faith in what the value that it adds, and I think if you're newish or sort of completely new and you want to sort of build up that confidence of being in a sort of event type environment and learning and getting ready before actually just hitting straight up 3 games competitive, whatever else, I think something like this works incredibly well. So whether that's ours or someone else's, I highly recommend checking it out. And obviously, we will be promoting more of these in the future. But as ever, whenever we do anything involving people that know us, it's always awesome just how lovely the people that are involved in our community are. And again, it was just incredible, like listening to all the different games, hearing how lovely and sporting and fun people were being. Again, Cowan, the Orc player, amazing. One of my favourite people. He was absolutely brilliant and just really, he was clearly having a hoot with his game as well. So, yeah, it was much like I thought it would be good. It was far better than my expectations, and that's a cool thing to do with the weekend, right? I think it's really fun.
Yeah, and we walked away with one individual who wasn't feeling very confident about going to events. She didn't really want to go, and then she's walked away from a day with us thinking she probably will go back to an event now and try and make the most of it, which if we've achieved nothing else that day, someone is now going to events feeling a bit more confident than they were before.
100%.
Which is the aim at the end of the day, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. All right, wonderful. Okay, so the only other thing to shout out is that thank you so much everyone who's been signing up to get involved in our next TTS League, the King of the Ping Summer League, which is going to be starting in about 10 days. And in order to access this, you sign up as a YouTube member. And again, shout out to our new YouTube members. We've had a bunch of sign-ups in the last few days for people getting involved in the league, so that's absolutely amazing. But you sign up via our YouTube, and then you too can come and play us. There'll be a bunch of us playing. It'll be a bunch of our mentees, a bunch of our community members, and also a bunch of the Plus members themselves. The Capitans in for this one, so that's very exciting. Chris is going to be giving a run out to something very different. And I also will be, I haven't decided what, but I will find something weird and wacky to run, much like the Speed War, and I'll get David to change the rules so that I can't wuss out and change to something good in the semi-finals.
No, you've already done
it. Our semi-final, I don't think the other semi-finals happened yet, but I did triumph over Jack Chapman in our semi-final, but that was a really good contested game on the new UKTC. So thank you to Jack for a lovely game, because he's an absolutely awesome opponent. All right. So that's the promo done. Do hit like and subscribe. If you haven't, do leave us a comment. And yeah, absolutely. If you have any other questions about different things, please do get involved. We'll save the other promo for the end. So again, shout out to James Minton, who's just become a member. That's really cool. Welcome, James. There's a bunch of you now, and it's awesome to have you all here. So who's in the chat?
Become a chapter master.
Yeah, chapter master
James,
as well.
Contact us.
You're a hero. If you would like some coaching or mentoring, James, you need to message us. Let us know, and we will sort you right out. So Mr. Fellblade is in, painting some metaphors for the GSC, eh? Oh, that's cool. Very exciting. And then Jack Doddy says, good evening all. Existence UK is in. Forge World Titan is in. Wow, there's a Forge World Titan in the chat. That's very exciting.
I feel seen with a lot of these usernames, Mr. Fellblade, Titans. Yeah. I'm in the room, gents.
It's like there's a lot of ones that speak directly to your soul, isn't there, David? David Lyle says, evening, folks. First time catching the live show and painting some Drukhari. David, I am very curious now. You're going to have to give me more than that. What Drukhari are you painting and what is your colour scheme? I want to hear some comments in the chat. I love me some Drukhari. I'm actually seriously contemplating starting the entire army over the next year and redoing the entire thing with new scheme, new and just leveling up, because I love my Drukhari bits, but anyone who has seen them can say they look like something that someone who could not paint very well painted in a rush to take to a bunch of events about a year and a half ago, and that's what they look like. Cool, wonderful. And then we've got Paint Celestine also in. Ola Bankston is in. First game of Pariah tomorrow. You're in for a treat, Ola. It's really cool. Hopefully this can prepare you a little bit as well. And Mr. Fellblade says boot camp sounds awesome. Yeah, Mr. Fellblade, I cannot stress enough. It was amazing. It was really fun. It was like a sort of like sort of Diet Coke event with a really wholesome sort of teaching and team building dimension at the start. Everyone came away really bonded and got to know each other, and yeah, really, really cool. Okay, wonderful. Right, we're going to move it to a little bit of 40k news, then we're going to jump into our main topic. So the main 40k news is, of course, that the big old WTC submission date is fast upon us. It's probably a week and a bit now, or a week at tops. All the big teams are going to be launching. What do you guys think? With the game and the meta in such a sort of evolving state, what do you reckon? What do you reckon to sort of the WTC? Are we going to see some massive surprises?
Yeah, there'll be something like, I remember the last WTC, it was Jack Harpster taking 30 Grey Knight Terminators. That was like the thing, and that could draw with Eldar. He just spent his whole week drawing with Eldar, which was obviously a huge thing last year. So I think with it being so recent, I think this is a good opportunity for those big brains to have.
Nothing is solved yet, is it? So,
no, exactly that.
I think there'll be some interesting things. I reckon now my prediction is one of the top teams will fuck up. So if we know,
it's not England.
So 2 years ago it was England when they had like Mike Porter on some bizarre like Eldar list. I remember. But hopefully it's not England this year. But yeah, there'll be one team that just misjudges it and misreads the meta. That'll be my prediction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm
excited because it's such a new pack. It's like, well, you're going to see there'll be stuff you've not seen, right? And I think that'd be really interesting. And it's going to be fun, sort of theorizing about how the different sort of eights are going to go into each other as well.
Well, we were just talking about, it's like, Blood Angel is obviously one of the big bads, or considered to be one of the big bads, especially in the UK. And Jack Harpster is happily sharing his singles Blood Angels list, which is 30 Vanguard Vets, 15 Jump Pack Intercessors, 15 Death Company, 2 Bolt Predators, basically. Yeah. And that's like quite a tanky version, whereas you've got our very own Ed Watts going to Sheffield with like pure MSU this weekend. And you're not thinking that Jack Harpster has just shared Team America's Blood Angels list freely. It seems unlikely.
What about a double bluff, though? I'd love for one of them to be a double bluff. Can you imagine?
But you do know that some of the weaker teams out there who maybe don't get as much time for testing and that sort of thing. Innes on StatCheck was saying the other day he's like played like 19 games in like 6 days kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like they're practicing so hard, and there are countries out there who just
the level of work right now is insane. I can attest, having seen it firsthand. It's bonkers. Yeah.
So then you've got the fact that some of the teams that can't practice as much, they are just going to go, I like that Jack Harpster Blood Angels list, and you know what, it is still a good list. So the standard of lists will be high, I'm sure, but there will be something disgustingly broken. Maybe CSM. I'll say that. I reckon CSM are going to have something which is absolutely vile and fine-tuned to hell.
I think it'll be interesting to see. And as I said, especially once you get to that world of teams where you can skew in different directions and whatever else. I mean, it's like something like Tyranids, right? Where it's like, there's this sort of obviously a ton of different builds that come out of that book now, and they're always such a team's army. It's going to be really fascinating to see if different things pop up. I can neither confirm nor deny that Rob Kimpton and I are running the Team England Drukhari list at Sheffield. I can't give you any. I can't give you any solid assurances on that. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Who knows? And David Lyle, speaking of Drakari, has replied saying, yesterday was treat day with Court of the Archon. David, was that a resin Court of the Archon, or have you converted one? And so today is Kabalites. The scheme is ultra bright green with magenta accent. That sounds delicious. I am a fan. Is that using the Doomfire magenta contrast paint? Sorry, David. I'll come to the Drakari Discord and talk more about this. I won't bother you about this over an entire show, but that's awesome.
You just have the chat with David now.
I hope you're enjoying it, David. I'm just always excited to see someone getting involved in Drakari. So yeah, sorry, Chris, you were talking. Oh no, Lewis, you were talking. You go.
I was just going to ask how. I'm hoping you can say this, but the England practice, is this all happening on TTS, or are you meeting up in person?
I think it's
like a secret.
It's obviously a bit of a mix with these things, right? And I think the geographical UK you can get across, but obviously there are clusters with Team England at the moment. There are kind of clusters and centres, and actually, I suppose one of the meta narratives of the last couple of years is the centre shifting a little bit more from the north and the Midlands to more. There's more of a sell in London now, right, in terms of the players that are involved. So actually, it's a bit of a mix, but there is an awful lot of TTS going on, as you would imagine. I think actually TTS is such a tool, right? I think all the international teams must be getting so much benefit from that these days in terms of how often they can play and how well drilled they are. Certainly, as we know from our scrims with Team Luxembourg, right, Chris?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. And so as far as other news goes, UKTC's got a new pack. We talked about it last week, but we're going to give you all the secrets in just a moment. And finally, the Drakari, according to Meta Monday, for literally just 1 week, had a 70% win rate. So I just want to shout that out after we put Drakari in S tier last week and everyone yelled at us. Are Drakari that good? Absolutely not. But the stats for a week say we were right. So I'm going to laugh early. It's better to laugh early, right? That's what I heard. And then we're going to move this along. So we're now going to be talking all about the UKTC pack and the new missions. We actually talked about this at the bootcamp on the weekend. So Chris had a bunch of materials already made. So I'm going to hand over to him. I wasn't trusted with the buttons. Chris is going to take it away and manage the screen. So let's see it, Chris.
So here we go. And then I've got to dive into my one and hit play.
Seamless transition.
Beautiful.
People wouldn't have even known that was happening.
Crazy. Might need to move my little face out the way at the bottom of the deployment zone, right?
I can't now see the screens.
Oh, well.
But is your face in the way, is it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, that's disappointing, isn't it? Now it's not.
That'll do it. Yeah, that'll do it. Beautiful.
That will smash it right out of the park.
Whilst Chris is sorting that, we have
absolute perfection.
Jack Tight in the chat. He attended one of the super secret Team England testing days.
Indeed, he did.
Dun, dun, dun.
Because Jack Tight can and should play for England. He's good.
I was going to say, have we got
get on with it, Jack? The only question is whether he can be bothered. I think that's basically the only dividing line as far as I can see. What a talented little player he is. But we talk about Jack Tight enough. Let's talk about the UKTC instead. Chris, take it away. Let's talk about mission 1.
Okay, cool. So these just for frame of reference, these PowerPoints we used at bootcamp in my planning your turn section, just so. The idea when we went through this was we got everyone to guess what do you think an average primary score is for each mission, because that's quite an important thing to know when planning your turn and just kind of getting vibes. So are you doing okay on primary, or actually are you scoring less than normal? So UKTC mission 1, we've kind of got this awkward dawn of war, but you're also starting really close to your opponent on half of the board. New deployment zone. And we are playing the mission Terraform, which is 4 points per objective.
Yeah.
Okay. So 4 for your home and 4 for the midfield and 4 for your opponents. And then you can do an action. Now, this action completes at the end of your or in your next turn, right? So you have to survive the turn, and if you do manage to survive the turn or keep hold of the objective, you terraform it, which means for the rest of the game you'll be scoring 2 additional points, and your opponent can't do anything about that. It's just 2 points in the bank. In addition, you've got swift action, which is battle line units can do actions if they advance or fall back.
Yeah, having taken that away, they've given it back, but specifically for Battle Line. All in the same moment. It's beautiful. And if we're looking at this from a UKTC sort of deployment perspective, for those of you at home, essentially we've got it's the new sort of long ways, but one chunk of the deployment is much deeper than the rest. I can't remember what that one's called, but it goes across it's like Dawn of War, a new Dawn of War, I think.
Sweeping Engagement, I think it's called.
Oh, is it now called Sweeping Engagement? Wonderful. And you've got, again, a big home ruin, as is very common, but this is actually much less centered over the objective. Then you've got one L on the far flank, which is very nice in your deployment. And you've got the two little boxes, which used to be in the middle somewhere, have now been brought together to form a larger protective central building, which essentially gives you a massive staging point right in the middle of your deployment, facing not very far away from your opponents as well. And then you've got two Ls sort of sat over the middle objectives, and you also have a very nice blocking set of new little mini ruins in the middle, which you can cross over very easily. But actually, there's a lot more obscuring centrally now on the UKTC pattern there was before.
Definitely, and I think it's really good to note on this one in particular, there aren't any safe objectives outside
They're really not
your home field. Because
this is typical of the pack.
Yeah, you look at the one on the left, and okay, you can get in there, you can get on the tip of the objective, you can be nice and hidden, but you're going to be really limited the amount of OC you can get on that objective, and your opponent's just got to walk up to it with some chaff that's OC2, and they'll take it off you. Meaning to properly claim that objective, you've got to be out in the open. And the other objective on the other side, you have got to cross past the line of sight blocking lines from the two central ruins, and effectively be stood out in the open, or on the other side of the ruin, so stood facing your opponent's deployment zone, to be able to hold that one. And then obviously the middle is a bit of a death trap because it's got no cover, and you are completely out in the open. So you can realistically look at this, and when we did this with the boot camp players, is that you can pretty reliably hold your home objective, and you might terraform one of the middle ones if you get in early, and that was about it.
Yeah, it's going to be a tussle for the flanks, isn't it, in a big way, because anything central is right in front of this beautiful new staging area where you can just, your opponent's going to have stuff in there that's going to push out and hurt you, so anything going to the middle needs to be prepared for a lot of trouble. And then on the edges, as you say, if you hide and stage behind those ruins in the middle, there's enough objective very close to your opponent that they can probably throw a good OC on, and they'll just deny you that way. And if you push out further, you're visible to most of their side of the board. So it's very difficult until some exchanges have happened and you've got a foothold in the game to actually lock down any of those mid-board objectives. Would you say, Chris?
Yeah, I think this is such an interesting one, because we had a question on the boot camp day. It's like, which one is your natural expansion objective?
I don't think it exists anymore.
Yeah,
I think it's whichever one you win on is the answer.
It is actually no ideal circumstance.
No.
If you think, as it's like on the left-hand side, you need to move 9 inches just to get onto the objective.
Yeah.
And that creates issues for if you want to like cleanse, for example, or something, and you haven't got a battle line unit to advance. So you're probably thinking about getting battle line units on the flanks in order to, especially if you want to try and reach that one. And on the right-hand side, as you say, what happens is, if you look, your opponent can see, if you're on the right-hand side, if you're sat on that objective. Oh, sorry.
Oh, Chris is getting called. Okay. How naughty.
Sorry.
Go away, I'm streaming.
Yeah.
Not now, Mum. Are you winning, son?
So, what we're seeing here is that if you're on that objective on the right-hand side, and you can be seen from like that L on the, or just outside that L on your opponent's top left-hand corner, and they can be hidden behind like that central blocking thing. So actually, and they can draw a line straight down there. I don't know why I'm pointing with my finger. So what that does is that creates like an ideal situation for like the anti-tank and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
controversial take. My Tau list absolutely loves this deployment.
No, not a controversial take at all. I think the initial take with this was that combat had benefited a lot from the new pack. I think to a significant degree that is true. But I think UKTC was always about exploiting the sides and the edges and the angles, and I don't think this new pack actually changes that at all. I think quick, good shooting can find all sorts of joy if it pushes the sides. What it can't do is just sit in its own deployment and just blast you off in your deployment, right? That option has been shut off. But if you're mobile, you can either push up the edges, or you can actually push into the middle of those middle ruins. Anything can go and stand in those. It's very easy to push up and into those once you get a moment and opportunity as well. So there's all sorts of opportunities to exploit with this. But I think from a combat staging perspective, this is far better than UKTC used to be. There are so many more places you can be getting ready to push out from.
Yeah, I just look at that middle bit where you've got the two buildings stuck together, and now it's big enough that I can stick the Storm Surge behind it with a screen of Pathfinders and Fire Warriors in front of it, to a position where as soon as something exposes itself, touch the ruin, see over the top,
exactly,
shoot everything out. And
exactly
with the screen, and where you can position that screen now in relation to a big model's base, is that no one can shoot that screen unless they've got a lot of indirect. So we take Blood Angels, as my games with Sam have shown. If he can't shoot the screen, he can't then charge anything important.
Yeah,
so it's all well and good having a really nasty unit of Vanguard Vets or Death Company behind those joined up buildings on your side. But if you can't charge anything, then you're effectively just stood there not holding an objective, not doing anything.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And so mobility is very important, whether that's, I mean, this has always been true of UKTC packs and possibly of 40k in general, but fast shooting good, fast melee good, perhaps a combination of the two, very, very good. And as far as in terms of the play out on a mission like Terraform, where you're starting an action which, if your opponent lets you do it, is just going to drip feed you points for the rest of the game. This is literally triggering trading, right? This is triggering engagement. You're both going to be pushing things out, threatening to terraform. It's on your opponent to then stop you doing it. And I see this being a mission where for the first couple of turns, nobody terraforms if all goes well. And then one side manages to get a foothold and advantage in the game.
I think that's it,
at which point it spirals.
It's going to be that initial trade. It's going to be back and forth, turns 1 and 2. Someone's going to come out the winner, and then they'll terraform. And then that's like kind of game.
That's exactly it. And so the reserves game is important. All the sort of interplay between melee units and fight first and interventions, other things on the flanks is very big as well. And you're looking to make a breakthrough on one side, lock that point down and push, I think. But it could happen on either flank. There's not as you say, one flank is obviously a little bit safer to shooting, but actually, depending on what you're playing into, you have great staging opportunities to hit their supposedly safe side as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's going to be a brutal first mission.
Absolutely brutal. You do not want to pair someone scary, like let's say a Jack Tight round 1.
Yeah, I did.
As is my way.
That, ever so slightly, if I can be critical, but that this is really going to show up player skill, and
it will.
Having this as your first mission, where you're going to have some absolute killers paired into some people that are just there for a bit of a laugh. I have a feeling this might have a potential for some kind of feel bad scenarios where people are getting 0 on their primary, or they're just getting steamrolled even more than they would already be steamrolled if they were paired into someone significantly better. It feels like this might work better and slightly later in the pack.
Potentially, yeah.
Alternatively, I could also see a situation where a slightly weaker player actually ends up beating a slightly stronger player just because they can keep knocking each other off of primary the whole time, and it just comes down to cards. I think that's something. I played this mission in a self-made battle report. So I played the other weekend. I played my AdMech into my Grey Knight to film battle report. I didn't have the 2 middle bits of terrain, so the entirety of the middle of the board is wide open because the pack hadn't put those in at the time. But the game very much, and it's the nature of the armies, right? But it was just like, oh, I scored 4, oh, you scored 4, oh, I scored 4. Like that was just inevitable, and I could also see that happening, especially early doors where people try and spread themselves out across all 3, and they just keep chipping away, and no one's actually hitting that killing blow. Whereas realistically, it is probably more likely that you do try and hammer one side. If your opponent hammers the other, cool. We're playing end-to-end hammer and anvil.
Yeah, exactly that. It's exciting though. I like this as a mission point. I think from a purely biased perspective, there's just so many more places to put Drakari vehicles on the deployment now. It's really nice. I do think the midboard also played this mission against a very good Space Force player a couple of days ago. And there's some fun potential with heroic interventions from stuff hiding in those central little boxes as well. Like if you're not careful, you can end up getting over engaged by a big charge and then something very scary. For example, 6 assault centurions could suddenly waltz out, start whacking, and unless your incubi decide to make half their 5-up invuns, it could be really, really bad. And so I think I really like that. That's a Gazgul pocket as well. My not that well established Orc cat says Gazgul's going to love that little box near the center, ready to go when the time is right. So I think big chunk. As Blood Angels just love all these boards. Spoilers, they're just quick. They can hide. They're going to make the most of all of this. But I think a lot of nice brawly melee units are going to like the interplay in the middle. Where I think the key thing, as I say, we've talked about the flanks and the trading. A lot of armies are going to live or die by when they choose to make their push in the game as well. I think this is a map which is not giving you so much of an edge on a flank that the circle round is the only way to go. I think actually deciding to go and to jam in the center at the right time is going to be a big deal for a bunch of armies as well. Cool. All right, should we move it along? Also, having played Terraform, I like it. I think it's fun. I need to play it into some stronger players before I know how much of an advantage we're dealing with, but it felt fine to me.
There you go. So, mission 2 is the classic Take and Hold. So we've got 4 objectives across because of hidden supplies. So it's a 6 objective mission. And Take and Hold means you get 5 points for holding 1, 5 points for holding 2, 5 points for holding 3. Now, this is, and it's quarters deployment.
Search and destroy, the old 9 circle in the middle.
So this has become a very interesting one now. So if we're thinking about what is a generous primary, obviously if you get 3 turns of 15 in an amazing world, that's basically done.
You laugh.
But what is the more realistic thing, and what most people will be aiming for, is 4 turns of a 10.
Yeah.
And if you have bottom of turn, getting that extra one. So we're looking to score somewhere between 40, 45, maybe 50 primary, unless we're getting smacked. So when it comes to that, you're immediately thinking, right, well, obviously my home field's one of those 5. So where is the other 5 coming from?
Yeah.
What is my natural expansion objective? And this, again, there is no necessarily obvious answer, or not one that you're happy with. So if we look through them, obviously the problem with the middle ones is that
it's a trap.
You've got 2 central objectives with a deceptive little baby ruin on it, which might hide you right up until your opponent tries to get you.
Before your opponent moves.
As once they've moved, you'll be like, this wasn't safe at all.
Who knew? So, I mean, there is a possibility of some armies will just be able to overload and threat saturate, and you won't be able to deal with it, and they will steal a 5 off you or something. But, I mean, you stick a battle line OC2 unit across those 2, and you're probably going to OC whatever they've tapped on there. So then you're thinking, right, is it top left or is it bottom right? And the logical place in my mind is bottom right for 2 reasons. Firstly, realistically, you're going to be putting a lot of your army behind those 2 big, or like that super L that's in the middle of the board now.
Yeah.
And that means you're closer to the bottom right-hand side. And second of all, if you are aim for the top left-hand corner, you would have to deploy behind that middle L, and then you'd run out there. That's actually quite a far distance.
It's a huge distance to
and
cover.
You're probably just going to be sat out in the open, and then you're going to get shot and also charged by whatever they put in their big metal L.
Yeah.
So
very quick infantry springing from there will be all right, but it's still very difficult.
Yeah. So the seems like the bottom right is the obvious one. The only issue with that is if you look at the amount of space you can put on there. So if you want to stay an inch away from the wall so you don't get charged, you can probably only tap 1 or 2 models on there, which means you can get taken off it quite easily.
Yeah.
And if you want to put more OC, you're going to be up against the wall, which inevitably means you could get charged. So this again, although you go, excellent, I can get 15 primary, you need to almost be deploying in such a way that you can really make a big push, but it's quite hard to make a big push onto the corner objectives to just physically get enough OC on. you'd have to get the other side of the wall. Then you're just getting shot. At that point, well, you're getting shot. Like on the other one, you're getting charged. On this one, you're getting shot.
Yeah.
So it's almost again you need to be setting yourself up to be constantly able to take your opponent off the primary, I guess.
You do.
Yeah, I think this one really really highlights the sort of units that might be able to hold your top left objective without taking too much fire. So I'm thinking anything with infiltrate lone op.
Yeah, infiltrate lone ops are massive.
Lictors,
anything with a
ghost
very
shields.
small footprint that can be up.
Yeah.
Because it is a long way for the opponent, right? I'm looking
Yeah.
at that thinking if I've got mandrakes hiding just up there and then I can block off / give them enough problems on the other side that they might just get a bit of a cheap hold for free. But it's you want those light throwaway / frustrating type units, I think, to do that kind of job.
100%.
Going first is quite nice on this, just to get
huge momentum for going first.
Early foothold. Obviously, your opponent going second does have a better chance at just scoring a flat 15 at the end than you do, but
I think if you're going first, I think for a lot of armies, you just need to create a huge number of problems at once, is how I feel. I don't think you're going to passively win. Maybe secret missions change this a bit, and this is where I need to get a bit more savvy on secret missions, but I think going first, unless you cause a lot of chaos, you're not going to passively win because the game state just rewards whoever can sit tight and then push for the end game. But it's taken hold. It's still very meat and potatoes. It's nice to see a 4 objective in the middle mission out there. And I think this one should be a good, raucous, violent festival between a whole bunch of armies, especially when you get 2 melee armies on this. This is going to be a whale of a time.
Yep.
When there's not a lot of guns to think about, it's going to get so crazy so quickly, and I'm here for it.
World Eaters, baby.
I'm going to just quickly field a question from Stephen Neal in the chat, who asks, what do we think of Death Watch being wrapped up into the Agents of the Imperium Codex? My overall feeling on Imperial Agents is basically that how good an idea it is simply going to depend on how well they execute it. I'm well up for the idea. I think the idea could be great. And if they create this interesting, flavourful book with a whole bunch of kookiness and weirdness, which, to be fair, I think they have done with Imperial Agents in Kill Team, is my understanding. That they sort of tested the water there. If they do that, and if Death Watch are kind of logically organised into that, then I'm here for it. But it does have the feel of a book that could be on the thematic side, but lack for, certainly from a comp standpoint, lack for a sort of order or logic that makes it function, right? What do you guys think?
It would be nice to have a home for all of those weird kooky units. To have a proper home for this, a proper place for
the Imperial armors. I like are the weird ones, and this feels like a good opportunity, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the rumor is that a bunch of stuff's getting wrapped into that Imperial Agents book, or Agents of the Imperial book, like including Grey Knights.
Oh, so, that would be a big change.
If they, if they Grey Knights,
feels like a stretch for the Grey Knights.
Well,
Grey Knights have got a big enough roster.
If you go back to the OG, it was
Demon
Hunters, Xenos Hunters, right?
Yeah, I remember that Inquisitor model with the hammer and the bird. That was a good time.
Yes.
Classic White Dwarf when I was younger.
Yeah,
a lot younger.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hope they don't, but at the same time, I mean, we spoke about this previously. I'm not entirely sure that the Grey Knights actually have enough depth to warrant a entire codex, but Custodian's got one, and I guess it's similar to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, as you say, like if they get it right, then I think it'd be really cool. I think they have proven they can write codexes with so much flavour.
I agree.
Really create army character. They've also shown that they can really mess it up.
Yeah.
So we'll wait and see.
We will. I'm excited for it, not least because we don't even know what else we're getting for a while. So it's the next exciting thing for 40k releases. Really. And thank you, Mr. Fellblade, who says this is a great view with the maps. Yeah, I agree. For those listening at home, this is a visual one to an extent. I'm sorry about that. I think the overall macro approach to the missions that we're doing here is useful, but it is obviously with these things, it is really useful to visualize and look at the actual terrain. Again, this one shares some similarities with the other one, which is that again you've got great central staging and hiding for your stuff. You've got a really nice central block. You've got a very safe defensive home ruin. And then the central staging objectives on the flanks are both actually deceptively close to your opponent. And then the middle itself is, again, blocking a lot of incidental shooting across the middle and isn't an especially safe place to expect to hold primary. That's the key thing. Cool. Should we move it along to mission 3?
Everyone's favourite supply drop.
Fuck this absolute nonsense.
So
I played the Thousand Suns Mirror on supply drop when we scrimmed with Luxembourg, and that was a stressful flipping evening.
So everyone's favourite. It comes across as reasonably straightforward. So you only score for no man's land. That's important to note. Holding your home field is basically a waste of time. And basically, for every no man's land objective you hold, for round 2 and 3, you get 5 points. Round 4, you get 8 points. And for round 5, you get 15 points per objective. You might be sat there going, that sounds wonderful. Well, you are wrong, because in fact, at the start of the game, once you have deployed, you roll some dice, and basically you assign round 4 one of those objectives to disappear. It's gone forever. It doesn't count anymore. And in round 5, you then assign one which is going to be left behind, which means another one's going to disappear. So when you're playing round 4, there's only 2 objectives you can score. And when you're playing round 5, there's only 1 objective you can score. Obviously, this creates a huge advantage for the person going second, because they can hopefully aim to dogpile on. You've got the fact that you're not scoring primary because you're not holding, or consistently because you're not holding your backfield consistently. So very similar. It's the same terrain layout, same sweeping engagement as Mission 1. And as we discussed in Mission 1, it's quite easy to be constantly knocking your opponent off.
It really is.
And then at the end of the game, boom, 15 points. Everyone's happy. I'm surprised they put supply drop in.
Me too.
Quite a controversial mission.
Especially round 3 when you start hitting the scary players.
Yeah, that's a really common thing, is that, us scrubs who go 2-0 and then play someone good at the game and go 2-1. And now
get our just desserts.
Absolutely flattened. But I mean, tactically, it's about you can't allow your opponent to build up any sort of like large advantage. If you've got bottom of turn, you have to be realistically putting your army towards that, and that's where all the action has to be. And when we scrim Luxembourg, we played this mission, and
it's either a 10-10 or a 20-0, right?
Yeah, and both we were lucky, and I think we went second more than they did. Basically,
we basically did, yeah.
So therefore, we won. But I played into sisters twice, once into Jacktite using them and once into their actual sisters player. Both times I managed to allow them to rapid ingress their Paragon Warsuit suit.
Don't do that.
Onto the correct side. And my game plan was just hold the middle and the other one, and then it won't matter at the end. That's the wrong play. You should definitely just make sure you bundle over to... but I guess you've got a slow army. You need to try and work that one out.
Primary in this mission is gold dust, so you just need to decisively claim a chunk of the board, and it's important, obviously, to have an eye on, can you get to the scrap that will inevitably happen over the one that's disappearing. My brain initially went, this is compounded even worse by the sort of secret mission dimension, but thankfully the easiest secret mission obviously can't actually be fulfilled on this mission, because there won't be 3 central objectives to hold. Because otherwise that's a 35-point swing at the end.
It's great.
I do wonder if for the player going first in some situations there is a secret mission counter to the conventional endpoint swing here. If you can jam a Magnus on their backfield at the end.
I was going to say, your opponent doesn't care about their home field, so maybe
that's it. There might well be a Warlord Seas at the end, which is one of your ways out. So this is one to test with the secret missions in mind, I think. But again, it's going to be incredibly low scoring, and the person on second has this tremendous advantage unless you can create something decisive like Haywire Scourge rolling well above average to sort of get you home at the end.
And going first, so you could get some early position and grab that early primary, doesn't work because of the deployment. They can get to you anyway. It's really quite often in the old UKTC, if you went first, you got board position, but you also went, you've got 1 turn to get to me, otherwise I'm just going to get some primary early times. You're not going to get that this time.
If we're looking at that far left ruin, this is one of those opportunities for, again, infiltrating or scout moving units to push up, because what you need, and again, this is going to depend on what you're playing against, is something to literally stand in the way of what is presumably going to come flying out at you from that ruin, right? You need stuff that's going to stand in the way. But again, flying armies don't give a shit, and we'll get over you anyway. But that's, Drukhari players, that's where your beast pack's going, man. He's going to go and stand in front of that and try and buy you a turn on the objective on that side, or depending on how they deploy, might want to block him off from getting the move on. But there's definitely some plays here, but it's going to involve sacrificing assets and pushing out, which is always scary in 40k. I'm going to shout out Sean Catewell, by the way, who's in the chat, says he got the time wrong. That's
welcome, Sean.
Classic Sean. Lovely to see you here.
We thought we'd change it up and do
what
it.
We mean by 10, 10, and 20-0, it's team speak, Sean. So it refers to how big the differential score gap between the players was. And so a 10-10 is a draw, 20-0 is like a huge deficit, 50-point deficit. I actually had a coaching game with Sean yesterday, and Sean was a little bit down on himself during that game. I was a bit sure, but you thought that was going worse than it was, because I think our deficit in the end was actually quite small. That was probably a 12-8, I think, at best. It was a tough old game. I hate Vanguard Ultramarines. I hate them so much. They're extremely difficult to play against, but it was really nice to play, Sean. All right. So, yeah, that's supply drop. Continue to be lucky. Continue to go second. Maybe there's a secret mission game plan in there that can get you out of dodge as well.
Point of order, if I can, before we move on. Our good friends at Games Workshop had an opportunity with the new mission pack to rewrite the dice rolling mechanic at the start of this, where your first dice roll decides which objective disappears, and your second dice roll decides which objective stays.
Me and the Luxembourg captain had a proper Barney over this in the middle of our game because we both misunderstood it. Oh, man.
I should probably say we haven't actually mentioned the mission rule here. They've put in rapid escalation, which I believe is you can put, once you've deployed, I think, you can put 200 points of battle line in strat reserve.
Yeah.
And they can come down turn 1, but not in your opponent's deployment zone.
Yeah. So have fun with that, guys.
I'm not sure how much. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I would have, knowing UKTC, I feel like there probably is a reason why they've put this special.
Yeah. Do you find that out? Do you find that out after you know? Can you decide after you know which objectives are going to disappear?
That's a very good question.
I don't know,
because if
that might genuinely be relevant.
That's what makes sense in my head. The objective disappears
and you adjust,
and then you shift your battle line off the board and put them back where you want them.
That's interesting. Yeah. And if you happen to have battle line that's quick enough to compensate for the chaos that causes, then that's great.
Hello, gargoyles.
Yeah, hello, gargoyles. Yeah, we'll look into that more and try and figure that out. Maybe that gives you a little bit of recollection, I guess. Okay, UKTC Mission 4. Take it away, Chris.
Okay, right. So you've just played a mission where where you haven't had the joys of holding your home field for points. So guess what? You get another one. Who wants your home field? So that's right. There are now 2 missions in this pack where you don't get any points for holding your home field. So this is No Man's Land only. It's 4 points per objective. Okay. I think it's capped at 15. That's right. And this is Burden of Trust. So what that means is you can choose a unit to guard an objective.
Not an action, although it sounds like one.
It sounds like an action. It is not an action.
No.
You can guard your home field. So you do want something on your home field. And then you score it at the end of your opponent's turn. Is that right, Tom?
That's right. So you start the guard in your own turn, and it's then going to score at the end of your opponent's turn. They can stop it by either taking that objective off you or killing the guarding unit. So this is quite a spicy one where you sort of have 2 primaries running in tandem. You've got your command phase scoring, but you also have the guard points coming in at the end of your opponent's turn. And you can be scoring for your back objective here as well. So I recommend having a score sheet that has both of these running. You don't want to be trying to track all your primary on one of these because, spoilers, multiples of 2 are also multiples of 4 if you do it enough, which means actually you're not going to be able to look back at this and understand what the hell either of you scored in certain moments in the game. So it's very important to be tracking the guard points alongside the command phase points to avoid confusion and avoid any little 2 extras or 2 minuses getting sort of snuck in there or missed.
I see you've been brushing up on your math skills post boot camp there, Tom.
Oh, I'm just so good at maths. If you ignore all my failures to understand charge percentages, I'm really actually
not going to mention any particular incident, but Tom did think a 9-inch charge was 47% successful when he wrote it down on his paper.
It doesn't matter. We did it once. It's fine. I know I wouldn't try it if that helps, and that's what I said at the time. My brain goes, "Don't do it." That's the important thing. So I think the interesting one with this is obviously, again, those extra points reward you for getting a decisive foothold in a portion of the board, and once again the deployment simply does not make that easy. and that means to honestly to win a good position in the game, you need to break your opponent on one flank, but you also need to be ready to take opportunities to do it on either, as far as I can see. And then the middle obviously becomes a bonus once more control is established. The guard is a very nice little one. It's quite confusing the way it ticks off at the end, and I haven't yet been able to fully break down and determine, does that advantage someone at some point? It feels like both players get a nice drip feed of points as long as they start locking down some objectives. But it does add some stuff. And obviously the second turn is still on endgame swing, so there is still a very generous primary swing for the taking here if you go second.
No, absolutely, because your guard completes at the end of the game as well. So yeah, if you can get across and just hold... If you hold three
in the middle and a guard is I don't know if it caps at 15. It could be more.
Yeah, if it caps 15, right? So it's just guard your home field and one of the ones you're holding.
Yeah,
which you can just obviously do because you're holding them by definition. So that's just 15 at the end if you go second.
I've played this on multiple occasions in the last few days where someone has not scored the non-guard primary at any stage. This is a brutal mission in a whole bunch of ways.
Yeah. Army specific, but again, I can see this be another low scoring one.
Yeah.
So you finally slaved away. You're 4-0, and we've gone back to something a bit more classical from UKTC. So we've got Scorched Earth, which, as we all know, is hold your home field for 5, and then hold your natural expansion, which is generally the one in
do a burn
corner, and you get 5. Cool. So you get 10 for the whole game. And then at some point, you're going to burn your natural expansion one, and you're going to end up on 45 points. Yeah. And that's kind of like how it often happens. In order to max out your primary, you need to burn your home field on this one. But generally, it's a high-scoring mission. The only difference now, and I say the only, it's actually quite a big one, is what used to happen on UKTC was that middle objective had one of those L's kind of like sideways to it on either side. It wasn't quite the ideal staging point. Now there's a very good staging point for fast-moving infantry to be able to jump across to your opponent's natural expansion objective, which means it's not quite as safe anymore, especially if you've got things like advance and charge. Obviously, they can inch away from the wall and kind of ring it out. But I feel like this is quite intimidating mission to play into something like World Eaters, Blood Angels, that sort of thing.
It's worth saying the actual distance to cover to your sort of ostensibly safer side is a lot further on this than quite a few of them, right? Like it's a bit more of a gap. It's not quite as nice getting out to that far side. And actually, even once you're there, for quick shooting or reserve shooting coming in, that L is a lot less safe, than some of the ones we've looked at previously. Like you're quite exposed on that side. If, say, a Castigator turned up, fuck you, Jack Tight, wherever you are. So yeah, this one's interesting. The central staging is again very aggressive. It's not not in your deployment. So once you're tucked into those L's, you are pushing out across the whole midboard, as you say, including decisively hitting the far right objective, which is ostensibly your opponent's safe one. And also because they've got the little baby ruins making up that L this time, tanks can stage and then roll straight through that, which is very different. So they can be going right through the middle if they want from safety, which is very different.
Yeah, so I'm assuming it's not said in the pack, but I'm assuming even though those two ruins are stuck together, they are separate.
They are separate. Yeah.
Separate buildings,
That's
meaning
right. This is GW style terrain right here.
Yeah. So you can be in that in the medium-sized L there next to the objective
and be protected by
that
the one on
other ruin is effectively blocking your line of sight all the way through, which is spot on.
And as long as they don't have 21-inch flamer infantry, you should be absolutely fine. Fuck you, Jack Tight, wherever you are. And so, yeah, I think this is a cool mission. It's actually a good foil to some of the others where I feel like the Heidi stagey is much easier. It's not quite as intuitive on this, but there's a potential for a big strike from the center when the time is right. It's got a bit more of that traditional UKTC. There's a huge wasteland between my safe objective and their safe midfield one. It's got a bit of that again, where it's quite a long way to actually cover that ground, and it's very open. And again, reserves loves the sides on this one. Like the sides, once you come in, start exploiting them, are very, very vulnerable. There are some crazy angles into your own deployment from your opponent's side. And Jack Tight in the chat says, "Not my fault. You brought a bunch of nice squishy horde of T3 bodies." Yeah, Well, you know me. That's what I like to do. I'll get you next time. I won't. Cool. Okay. And then I think the other thing with this, I mean, this again, having played this today, the burning at the end changes the tempo on this one a lot as well. You really want to make sure you don't burn out in the mid game because your opponent really can just correct any denial pretty happily right at the end. And so if you're dead and can't stop them from doing that, it's pretty sad. So I think Scorched Earth has a little bit more of an end game up for the decisive victor in the struggle in the middle now.
And we haven't obviously mentioned by far the most important thing about this mission, which is the mission rule inspired leadership.
Oh, this came up so much today, you wouldn't believe. This was nuts. This was bonkers.
Which is basically like if you can see your warlord and are within a certain close distance,
12-inch maybe, who knows,
you get +1 to your leadership.
Yeah,
it's
cool.
I'm not being funny, guys. I don't even know who my warlord is. I could literally.
I mean, when you're playing Tyranids, technically they all are.
We are one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I kind of miss Warlord mattering, you know. Why can't just put one more point on Assassinate if it's the Warlord? Why not? That'd be nice.
Yeah, I agree.
That'd be fun. Like, I really enjoyed that. I always used to enjoy the idea of the Warlord mattering, but there we are.
I think it's my
I think this is actually a really tough round 5. I think this creates a lot of interesting problems for the opponent. And I'd played basically 6 games of the other missions, and then I played Jacktite today playing this one and was like, okay, I was starting to think this was too easy for me. I was wrong. The perfect combination of player and deployment. So I think this is a tough one and needs careful play. And the reserves and the strat reserves and the screening game is so clutch on this one. In a lot of ways, it feels more like a traditional UKTC mission to me than the other ones do.
Well, there you go. That is
wonderful.
5 missions.
That's the pack. I mean, so if we're going to ruminate on,
we're just doing 5 missions, are we, Chris? We're not going 5-0 in this scenario.
We're not going to panic. We're not going to panic about round 6 and 7. We'll worry about that when we get there. Ed Watts, Ed Watts was maybe going to be on this, and he might have been more interested in those rounds, but he's not here, so it doesn't matter. So what we are going to do is, I think, before we move on to the podcast questions, if you're looking at those maps and thinking about UKTC in general, boys, what sorts of ingredients do you think your list now want that perhaps they didn't before, or is it business as usual?
Well, I touched on a little bit earlier. I think anything with infiltrate and loan up is going to be really valuable. Because the ability to stand out in the open and not die is going to be really important.
So you're saying take a Death Jester. That's what you're telling me.
Take a Death Jester.
Okay,
take 3. Why not? Okay. And obviously, vice versa to that is there anything in the game that can stand out in the open for a turn and not die? I'm not entirely sure the answer to that question is yes, but there are Deathwing Knights and stuff like that, haven't you? You could potentially do it, but if you are playing some of those slower armies that don't necessarily have access to sort of janky, chaffy stuff, then you've got to really think about how are you going to jump on this objective with enough OC that someone's not just going to nab it off you.
Completely.
And a lot of that involves being stood out in the open. So have we got ways in our codexes to stand out in the open?
Yeah. For my part, I think, and again, I'm influenced by the games I've played, I think throwaway assets for the middle are very important because the cards want you to go to the middle quite a bit. And so being able to put in not particularly valuable things there is great. I think having light assets for the flanks for the action type cards, but also the action type demands of some of the missions is really good. As Jacktite says, a Canoness with a 2-up invuln and a 5-up with a CP reroll and miracle dice is very good for standing in the middle. Urian Rakarth is going to do just as good a job, mate. You wait. I'm going to show the world. I'm excited. I think I'm going to run him at an RTG in a couple of weeks and just shove Urian in the middle and go, well, you have to kill him twice. Unless I roll a 1. But stuff that can go out there, I've played a few games where I think having cheap disposable OC to throw into the middle early doors is also great because it's a really difficult, vulnerable place to be. But then just behind it, if you can have a very serious threat, I think that really helps as well. So I've seen a bunch of people play different units in that position, but a hammer unit drifting central, ready to push out when the time is right, is also really good. Enclave Cafe 40k says, can't wait to park a Ghost Keel in the middle. Ghost Keels, love these boards.
We're back.
They really like these boards. I'm always baffled people aren't running a bunch of Ghost Keels. They're really good on these boards.
Honestly, even before the new packs, they were the first 2 things I put in every tower list. It was like, 3 of those straight in. Thank you very much.
I think scout moves in tandem with the infiltrators are also amazing, right? Being able to scout out and actually create genuine physical blocks so that the vulnerability of the flank is less compounded is really good. Being able to physically stop people reaching your ostensibly safe side now is a big deal because they can get to it. Simply put, if you leave them to their own devices, they can stop you holding primary in the middle. It's on you to actively engineer the circumstances in which that doesn't happen now. So you need to come up with solutions for doing that, I think, a lot of the time. What do you think, Chris?
Sorry,
you go.
Oh, sorry, no, I'm
go ahead.
talking over Chris, but Sodja. I think that they infiltrate and lone op kind of combo really mixes well with any access to redeploy.
Yep.
So I can see a lot of situations with the ghost kills, in particular if we think about Tower example, where I can put them on one side and then go, actually, opponent has countered the ghost kills. They're going straight over the other side, and then I just apply massive pressure on one of the sides. So.
I can see why they fix redeploy to not be after first turn now. I think
which with Cowie on Tower always was.
It's already phenomenally strong now because you want to be blocking out options for your opponent at the start. So it's a really big deal.
Yeah. Anything that you can stick across the middle of the board is a really dick move to do it, but just laying out that infantry in a nice long line and saying no one's infiltrating here, and oops, we're redeploying back.
Yeah, Dan Hammond says 20 Necron warriors next to a reanimator and a Luminor Ceres. Yep, I mean that's the thing, Dan. It's a real thing. You monster. But also, it's an interesting one. Necrons. We've been talking about Necrons in largely pessimistic terms over the last little while. These primaries are pretty demanding, and Necrons are an army that can go and be places. And actually, although I think they're a little weaker on the secondaries, some of the edge case stretching secondaries have gone away. So actually, I think Necrons, in terms of the play of these missions, probably don't mind it. I think I'll be interested to see how they get on. Actually, I don't hate it for Necrons. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I think it looks like a really good pack. I think it's tough, close games, especially when you hit players of an equal skill level. I think you need to get very comfortable with there being a turn or two in which it feels like you're not locking down control of the board. And then I think it's about securing a decisive advantage in one or other place of the board. I have had 6 practice games where I have done that, and I have recently been party to a practice game where someone else has done that. So I'm confident that is how it works.
I think we've got there's a shout out as well for Titanic units as well, just to stick my oar in, given I'm on the show.
Oh yeah.
I think the ability just to tow in a ruin and see over the top of it, I think
they've got a very natural hiding point now, right?
100%. Those central L's with the two combined terrain pieces, I think gives you huge amount of reach across the board where otherwise you wouldn't have it. So I think that's good.
Yeah, we were quite down on them in the last episode, but Chaos Knights actually I think should really enjoy these boards. From a sort of throw knights out, do things like they can hide a lot of knights very centrally, very safely. Play the OC game. I think they're in a nice spot.
Yeah, it's the high OC, isn't it? It's just
huge, absolutely huge.
People off consistently from
high OC armies are going to have a field day on these boards. Yeah, it's a big deal.
And take
Pure Tide program is in. Hello, Kyle. He says Cowie on Montcar and retaliation will kick ass. I believe you. If Kyle Grundy says it can be done, it can be done.
What about Crew?
What about Crew, Kyle? You coward. Seriously, we had him booked to come on and do state of play Crew, and then they got nukes. He says breaches instead. That's fine. I understand. Existence UK says Tiger Shark. Yeah, Tiger Shark. That's the whole thing. That's making the rounds. Tower having
with that 14-inch deployment, you could probably get it on the board.
Tower having a funny old moment right now. There's a lot going on. I think it's interesting. Kyle, we will get you on for a state of play Tower in the future, buddy. I'm excited to do that. Wonderful. Okay. That's us on the UKTC for now. I honestly, I can't wait for Sheffield. I think Chris and I will go in depth on what we learned. This is very much a learning event for us. Maybe we'll do well, maybe we won't. But the key thing is let's play these new missions. Let's play this new pack. Let's get out and see what the meta's like. And there's so many unknowns right now that I absolutely cannot wait. It's going to be amazing. So if you're at Sheffield, come and say hey. Tell us how you're finding it. I'm very intrigued to see what other people think.
And you might even get on film.
You might get on film because, spoilers, we are filming a mockumentary at Sheffield GT. We cannot wait. We can't tell you more than that. There's a whole bunch of other things in the pipeline, but it's either going to be brilliant or awful.
Probably a bit of both, I could imagine.
I guess that's our team, isn't it? Right. Okay.
Yeah,
wonderful. All right, let's move it on. Let's move on to some listener questions, guys. So, as ever, if you want to shout out some questions in the chat, do feel free. You're very welcome to shout us a super chat if you're so minded as well. It's worth telling Sai, who bought Chris a Deathwatch hat. That with the money that you gave us, you can't get a Deathwatch hat. So we need more funds.
There aren't many £1.99 hats that I can use to represent Deathwatch out there.
So if you're interested in buying Chris a Deathwatch hat, we need a little bit more money for that fund. So do feel free to shout out a super chat. Right, let's take it to the Discord. And as I say, if you do want to chuck other things in the podcast questions, you can. So first one for this week was Sai asking, how will shooting armies work on the new terrain setups? In brackets, my poor Tau. Lewis, take it away.
We're fine. Absolutely fine.
Absolutely fine.
I just think static shooting is not the one. It's got to be shooting that moves. I don't know what this means to my 2 hammerheads, because I do like putting 2 hammerheads in all of my Tau lists. But I think there's reserve play in there, and I feel guilty talking with Kyle in the chat because he knows a lot more about this than I do. But everything I say could be utter bollocks. But I think absolutely fine. I think the ability to, with things like breaches, with things like ghost kills, the ability just to reposition and put pretty nasty shooting exactly where you want it, I think hasn't really changed. I just think potentially there is arguments for dropping some of the longer range static stuff like the hammerheads. I think I'll keep them in for now just because they do delete vehicles quite nicely. But I think it's going to be potentially reserve place and stuff like that they're going to lean on. But then you've got the pivoting gains that you get with the hammerhead, and being able to retain the use of heavy and just poke out and just one shot stuff. So I think there's definite play there. I don't think Tau are dead by any stretch of the imagination.
No, they're still asset rich. They've got a bunch of mission play units. They've got a bunch of good OC units. They've got some tricks and tools. As Kyle says, retaliation looks even better. Yeah, get those angles the other way. The 3-inch deep strike way, that looks very powerful right now.
Yeah,
and quick shooting on the sides of these boards is still going to sting.
Yeah, 100%. And you've got as well, if a couple of these missions start quite cagey, that really plays into Kaoyon's hands.
Oh, it really does.
It means that when turn 3 rolls around and your opponent realizes, KG isn't quite going to win this, and they have to go out, you've already powered up at that point, and then you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Okay, so next up is Green Giant, who asks, what sort of units do you think will be key when list building with the new mission pack and the new UKTC layouts? Now, we've touched on this a little bit, but a short summary would be Infiltrate is a big deal, Lone Up is a big deal, Scout moves are a big deal, Brawler skirmishing units for the middle are great, lots of OC and harassment for the flanks. We didn't talk about this already, but Fight First is also a big deal on the flanks as well. It's nice to have things tucked away in those side ruins that if they do come to engage you, are going to fight before them. Lilith has been absolutely loving that right-hand side in my game. She's been having a great time. And so I think Fights First is very valuable there as well. So it depends a little bit on matchup to matchup, but there's a whole bunch of tools, and then speed and reach is also a very big deal too. And do have something to do actions. There's more actions in the game now. There are sometimes missions and actions at the same time. Like there's a lot of different things.
5 out of 18 secondary cards. It's like 20
plus some missions that literally need actions is a big deal.
Actions. So that's why you're going to see lists, I think, head more in an MSU style direction. Just so because with the scores going down, you can't afford to be like,
if you drop cards, it hurts. It really hurts. Yeah.
So I think you're going to need that extra. In my Grey Knight list, I've dropped a Dread Knight and put 2 scoring pieces in instead. So.
Absolutely. Enclave Cafe 40K in the chat asks, have any of you guys tried the new Votan unit? I've ordered it. I hope to have it soon. I do want to try it. There's a reasonable chance Votan might be my option for the TTS League in the summer because that feels like a reasonable option. The fundamentals of what this gives for Votan are massive. We've talked about it before, but you can now guarantee a lane of scout moves somewhere into most armies in the game. That's terrifying for the guns that Votan have. But also you have a cheap throwaway unit, which they actually don't have in the main. So it's opened up a lot of play for Votan. Mr. Fellblade next asks, if the Grimdark Future had something in addition to war, what would it be? He also says he's feeling whimsical. Chris, Lewis, what else is in the Grimdark Future other than war?
Disease, famine,
religious dogmatism,
pure
moth.
Depravity.
We've not even talked about moth, by the way. But the moth can deploy in the central ruin and be quite difficult to get at. By which point it would have covered the ruin, got to the middle, and started spawning off its moth pods all over the board, and then it becomes extremely difficult to deal with.
Moth pods.
But obviously, the rules for Codex Moth haven't been released yet, but me and Edwards are writing them. Okay, wonderful. And yeah, Ben Reed really likes the new forward deploy. That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. They just changed the game. World Eater's already quite a good matchup for Votan. It's a lot better when they can't reach you turn one. Mr. Felblay said that's very downbeat. You could have had cake or tea. Okay.
We could have. You're right.
We could have done, but you got to stay on theme, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Going to the Discord next, we have Pickleax wanted moth jokes for an hour. Well, we have just started, but no, we'll save the moth jokes. There's more to come. I might try and get John to make us a moth-related T-shirt because that went down a real treat on the last show. Scott says, which faction would you join if you got isekai'd into 40k? Now, I don't know what that means. And you get to choose. But it sounds like you're being press-ganged into 40k. You're in the universe. You've got to join a faction. Who are you joining, boys?
I'm joining the Tau Empire, I think.
Yawn. Yawn.
Oh, come on. It's the most likely way of getting a half-decent life for yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, fair enough. Chris?
So I was just Googling what isekai means.
It better not be awful.
Wow, funny, no. It is Japanese, but
Okay.
It's a sub-genre of portal fantasy.
Okay. I'm delighted that's how that sentence ended. Yeah, okay, yeah. Fantastic news.
So if I got, I mean, I would. You always default to your faction, don't you? So Grey Knights, but I don't feel that would be a good time. I don't feel I've necessarily got the
intense,
fortitude to batter off all those demons. So who's having the best time in life in 40k?
Orcs are having the best time.
They are actually, you know.
You are just wearing a t-shirt and running screaming across an open battlefield towards
all this religious fanaticism. I'm not sold on, to be honest with you.
It's tough. Sounds like it's tough for you to find a home here, Chris.
You want to be happy, don't you? You know. I'm running through all the factions. Let's go Orcs. Fuck it.
That's very much the attitude.
Orcs are there for a good time, not a long time, right? And they're one of the factions that actually genuinely enjoy the only thing available to most of them. So yeah, I don't think they're a bad shout at all. And I'm going to go with the Gene Stealer Cults because I'll have a bug up my brain and I won't know any better by that point. And it'll be fine. Be a nice easy time until I get digested by something. So that seems like a sensible way to play the 40k game, all told.
Maybe going out.
I'm going out hard.
We're all dying.
Yeah. None of us are making it very far in our chosen factions, I don't think. Enclave Cafe 40k says Deathwatch and Imperial agents apparently supposedly being added to Codex Moth. Yeah, that's right. I think it will be able to ally with Moth. The main issue that Codex Moth has got is that the Moth itself costs 2,000 points, which A, means none of the enhancements work, and B, makes allies really difficult. So I think that's going to be one of the issues. But my hope is that in the long run, Josh Roberts will balance it. But obviously, he's not seen the rules yet because me and Ed haven't released it yet.
With the full wingspan of the Moth open, how many objectives can it hold concurrently?
I think it can hold 2 quite reasonably. But that's where the Moth pods come in. It obviously shoots OC-15 mini Moths, which is a big part of the strategy I'm envisioning for it. This is all still coming together. I was thinking about it after the last show, but I'm confident I can write a rule set that will at very least make one very entertaining bat rep.
We'll probably get the model on TTF.
And we're going to need an enormous 3D printed resin Moth. If anyone knows where we can find one of those.
Lord of the Rings.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Yeah, I've got a whole vision. It's going to happen. I'm going to get some artwork off Scriv. I can't wait for it. But I don't want to give too much more away. Okay, next up in our questions. Right, this was a big one. So, Ultimate Funcast, preface. You can take this question as seriously as you like. That's how I take everything. And then he says, how much of your life does Warhammer in all of its forms take up? I've got other things I do outside of work, theatre, sport, music, video games, but I've always found the hobby, quote unquote, to be the most all-encompassing one mentally, certainly since my Ultimate Frisbee days. As someone who gets very little from my day job, I find myself thinking about Warhammer at work, home, really anywhere. This includes planning lists, game ideas, tactics, lore purchases, you name it. This amount of mental energy can be exhausting and is both a good and a bad thing. Is it healthy? ? Is it good that one facet of our life takes up that much mental space to the exclusion of others? Or is holding back a bit on going completely all in going to ultimately stop you or anyone else from achieving cool things with Warhammer? And then the too long didn't read is how much is too much time to spend on Warhammer mentally. Now this is some deep and profound nonsense.
Great question. Yep.
It's a fantastic question. It's something I ruminate on all the time. And actually, I suspect it's something that we all have interesting takes on. So I think we want to give this some time. This is a big deal. What do you guys think? I'll let you guys go first.
It's quite hard to take this question in a jovial way, really. I don't know how to.
Yeah, we're going to have to take this one seriously, but there's not really a light-hearted way to do this.
No, I think it's a really interesting one. I mean, we've all got different personalities. So from my perspective, I'm very much a hobby person, and I generally have one major thing in my life which I am focusing on, and that is my hobby. And then I'll have other things that I'm quite interested in, but I have like one major intense thing, and that's been, different at various points. But I like to have lots of interests running, but one is like the focal point. Yeah. So like for quite a while, 8 years or whatever it's been, 40k. I might have dipped in, doubled with other things, but the thing I'm trying to learn and understand about has been 40k. So I'm doing other like sporting hobbies or whatever. And I think, the answer is it takes up pretty much all my free time, like thinking wise. I mean, that's
on us for trying to go semi-pro, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it's obviously a bit different from my perspective and some of the team's perspective, just because of the content side of things.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's like I'm not just thinking. If it was just thinking about how I can improve my list, that necessarily wouldn't be it. For me, I don't spend a huge amount of time. I go through phases for that. Like at the moment, I'm really into the army I'm going to be using for the summer league. I've been like doing lots of research on that. That's quite an intense process, and I've really enjoyed that. But I don't. Yeah, like in terms of the actual playing of the game, I go through phases. But because we've got the channel, that is like a huge thing. I have constant guilt about not doing enough work for that. When I'm
as do we all, I think.
Yeah, when I'm, and it's it's an offset from like my teaching. Like you're teaching, like, oh, I've got free time, I should probably be doing something teaching. I managed to bypass that, get rid of that, throw that out of the window. It's 40k that I feel guilty about now. Yeah. And I'll be sat there and I'll be watching TV and I'll be like, I've got all those videos to edit, or I've got this script to write, or I could be doing this, I could be doing that. And I think for me, anyway, what happens is inevitably you just have time away.
You need it. It's crucial.
You do need it. And for me, I don't take a conscious decision to move away from it. Life just gets in the way. And we're very fortunate here with the team that there's enough of us now that I can just take a step back and it just runs itself and I've got no issues. And, and then I'll be like, oh, right, actually, these things are coming up. I'm back involved and I'm doing like loads of stuff. And you do need to be able to take that step away, I think. But
I think it's essential. Yeah.
But because otherwise you will just burn out. And the people who do this sort of job full time, I'd be very interested to know, like I mean, I haven't painted for 2 months, right? And what if, and because I didn't feel like it and I didn't need to. What if it was 40k was my job and I didn't feel like it, but I had to?
Yeah.
To provide. And I think it would be interesting to hear like how Art of War, Hellstorm, Vanguard Tactics, how someone like Jake
how they feel
doesn't go full time with it because he wants his other job. And you got other VT guys who are full time with it. So I think it is like a really interesting one. I'm not sure how they manage it. I think you do need to have that time. Right? Just from a general mental health perspective, I don't think so. It is. How can be healthy to be obsessed and think so in depth about a particular thing all the time.
Yeah. What do you think, Liz?
Yeah, I think it's a really fantastic question. I think it's almost asking, if we broaden it a little bit, effectively, what's the meaning of life, really? And the answer's not 42, funnily enough. But 40K. I mean, I think fundamentally, the world is a pretty dark place sometimes, and I think there's a lot of us that use the hobby to bring a bit of light back in, whether that's interacting with a like-minded community, whether that's like the feeling of finishing a paint job or going to an event and having a blast. So there's so many positives where actually, if you enjoy it and you're getting something from it and it's enriching you as a person, I don't know that there is an upper limit.
Yeah.
But you then have to be conscious of when the hobby becomes a bit of an obsession, especially if it's not a job and you're not making content, you're not doing all the kind of side stuff that we do. And at what point does it start potentially causing damage to relationships, whether it's families or kids or anything like that? And I mean, I know from my personal experience, I probably have guilt in a slightly different way than Chris, in terms of a guilt of, am I doing too much?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very fortunate that my fiance is incredibly supportive, and she was fully behind me when I said I was going to take a much lower paying job to go and try and get Saffron Slam to become a thing that would start helping pay the mortgage and all that sort of stuff. So I'm very lucky to have a partner that's fully behind me when I'm making those decisions. But when you're effectively trying to have a second job alongside a full-time job, I think we're under no illusions that I probably spend quite a lot of time planning events and sorting things out and being on shows like this and all this sort of stuff. It takes up a huge amount of time, and I probably have the guilt that I might be putting too much time into it. And then could I take a step back? But then, as I say, we've got the Saffron Slam is contributing to the mortgage now, so it has to work. It has to go ahead, or I need to go and get a different job. So I'm probably in that position that you mentioned, Chris, about what happens if I can't take a step back. And actually, I haven't yet got to that point yet because I love it so much. But I mean, I'm sure it will happen at some point, because if I'm setting up a 50-person 40k tournament, it takes me 5-6 hours to set it up on the Friday night, and then working effectively from 7 a.m. Saturday morning till 8 p.m. Saturday night, and then similar again on Sunday, and then it's 4 or 5 hours of clearing up, and then it's all the stuff when you get home to sort it all out and do all your emails, all your comms. Huge amount of time goes into that. And you can very quickly, I think, lose sight of why you're doing it and why it's important.
It's huge. It's huge.
So we'll see. And unfortunately, obviously, I don't have kids yet, but I'm sure that will happen in the future, and that is going to change everybody's perspective.
We've seen that for teammates of ours, right? Where it's like, again, like Lee Jones. I love Lee Jones to bits. He's had more important things to do in the last couple of years, and it's as simple as that. And it's, all these little pictures of his kid growing up. It's been absolutely amazing. He's not had as much time to play 40k. And you look at it and you go, that's great. That's just a straight up good thing. It's just a very positive thing happening right now.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I approached this question in a few different ways. The first thing I wanted to pick you up on, Ultimate Funk, was the idea that holding back on this would stop you achieving cool things. You can achieve cool things in this hobby by doing whatever the fuck you want, and that's incredibly important. You don't need to be an incredibly strong player. You don't need to be an incredibly good hobbyist. The most important thing is, do you enjoy what you do? Do you meet interesting, good people doing it and have a good time? And that was what I got into this hobby to do. And all the other stuff is just a ladder to nothing, really. So I don't think you ever need to feel like, there's some nirvana I could just reach if I could just do X, Y, Z. There's obviously a lot of highly competitive, highly successful players and content creators in this world, and it takes an awful lot out of them, right? A lot of our very best content creators either have enormous money, enormous teams behind them, or are essentially single and don't have to worry about anything else. And that works, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. But that involves compromising on a whole bunch of different things. From my own standpoint, I'm an obsessive and addicted person. I always have been, and I've found many different ways of expressing that over my life. And actually, 40k has probably been the healthiest one. I kind of dropped down into the area I was living in, age 25, and was like, I need to find something to do that's not going to kill me, basically. And I think 40k has done a very good job of doing that. But as someone who is obsessive and addictive, I can recognize it's no different. It has all the same facets within it. It's something you can overinvest your time into. It's something you can throw away money into. It's something you start doing to connect to people, but if you're not careful, can actually disconnect you from people. So in that sense, it's no different to any other addictive or exciting thing in the world. And so I think that's a useful way of measuring and understanding it. Think about, am I making and sustaining the connections I want and need in the world through this? If you are, great. If it's starting to stand between you and other things, you need to assess that, right? I've had a very interesting time over the last few months because it's been wedding season for me. And a little bit of me at the start was like, I really resent this. I've got a bunch of weekends. I've got to go and do weddings and stuff. And actually I'd got so in the habit of events over the last few months. And then actually you have a bunch of weekends out in the sun with all your friends you grew up with, and you're like, this is really good. This is an amazing thing. And I like the idea that playing events or Warhammer or whatever else should be even thinking about taking priority over that is nonsensical, right? So I think it's something to be in very clear dialogue with yourself in. But it's fascinating, really interesting question, not something we talk about enough on this show or on any content at all. I think it's a very fine line to walk. Look after yourself, Ultimate Funk. You'll be fine. You're a great person. Alrighty. So next up, Fells asks, what advice would you give a lesser experienced player who is struggling to adapt to rules changes? I've come across a couple, and it's hard because I'm not exactly a pro. What do you guys think?
I think no, carry on, Chris.
No, I was just going to say, I remember when I started in 8th, and I played with guys who played in like 7th, and they would get rules wrong, and I'd be like, I don't understand. Like, this is a brand new edition. Why are you getting confused? And then we promptly went to 9th edition, and I proceeded to get a bunch of rules wrong because I was getting confused about what was now and what was then. And it is an interesting one. Like, it does happen a lot. I think it's unfortunately the way you learnt the rules initially with muscle memory, and just repetition, and that's what we're seeing now. We don't have these repetitions for Prior Nexus, so we're like, oh, I'm not actually sure. Go back a month ago, right? All these players were playing in UKTC events. We almost measure the terrain out.
Yeah,
they
know where it's going.
They know what the cards are. They know the flow of the game, the patterns, all that sort of thing. How did they get that? Just by playing a lot. There's no like special solution there.
Yeah.
So it is just that repetition. And when you're trying to break it, it's almost like let's get the rule book out and let's take these things step by step. And just that muscle memory is really the first thing that comes to mind anyway.
Completely. And I think it's one of those things where you have to leave whatever idea you have of yourself at the door and start again. That's the most important thing. So like Sheffield this weekend, I could lose 3 games, 4 games, who knows? I don't know this pack well enough to know what's going to happen, right? And you can have some little idea in your head about what your average standard is or what sort of scores you should be hitting, what sort of placings you should be getting. And none of that is any use because the changes are such that isn't going to help you. And so we always on this show come back to trusting the process and understanding the process, and you're at the start of the process again. Basically, that's why it's frustrating. You want the outcomes, but actually you're back at the start of the work again. One of the great things about this game is that it routinely puts you back at the start and makes you do some thinking and some solving and some puzzling. But don't panic about it. Don't sweat it. If you lose a few more games than normal, that's fine. That's where all the learning happens anyway. And just relax and enjoy that ride. It's fun when it's new. I've really enjoyed my games over the last week or so because it's just enjoyable being surprised. I found out 2 games ago that Investigate Signals isn't in the pack anymore. I've been diligently putting stuff in the corners. It's not in there. I've played 4 or 5 games of Pariah before I even found that out. And you're like, lol, that's really funny. And that's okay. It's completely okay. Don't panic about it. Just enjoy it. And remember that, in a few weeks' time, you'll be back to where you were. But there's no need to fast track it. As I say, I had a couple of weeks when Pariah had come out where I didn't play at all. It was bliss. It was great. It doesn't matter. There's no rush.
Enjoy the process, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This is as you say, this is the fun part.
Exactly.
And I think from the perspective of a newer player as well, if you are relatively new to the game, I think it's not irrelevant, but it's effectively irrelevant what a lot of the stuff we're talking about in terms of trying to get maximizing your score, all that sort of stuff. I think you just want to focus on enjoying yourself, focus on the basic fundamentals of the game, about how you're moving, how you're shooting, and how everything's interacting, rather than worrying too much about how many points you're scoring or whether you got that primary or anything like that. I think you just, if you're new to the game, just get stuck into it, play some games, focus on having a good time, focus on getting your models to a point where you like them. And all the stuff about the specific balance changes, all the tiny little tweaks that Games Workshop have done, that'll all come in time, and just don't stress yourself out over about it.
But I think the key thing is overall they're all a net positive as well. Like the actual sort of negatives and feel bad experience in the game should be less. The game is looking healthier and closer towards the point of balance. I really like the direction this is all going. It feels like it's genuinely in quite good hands at the minute. So I think once you get to grips with the game, you'll find you're enjoying it a lot more. But also, it will be harder because a good close game is harder. So don't worry if it feels harder. That's the whole point. That's what they're going for, right? I want to shout out Enclave Cafe 40k, who's been great in the chat tonight, by the way. Lovely to have you here. Says, the good that Warhammer has brought into my life is incredibly humbling. The people getting through one of the toughest years in my life, I'm so grateful to this hobby. And yeah, I'd completely agree. I completely agree. So I dropped down in the middle of a place I'd never lived, didn't know anyone, mid-20s, and was like, how am I going to find people to connect with and to socialize with, and it has done that for me. And I think at its heart, that's exactly what the game is. It's an incredible social experience. Just don't slip and lose sight of that being the point of what it is. And that's always the big thing. And Nogal Matthew says, I like the way you all cover the stuff. Thanks, Nogal Matthew. We've got 3 of us tonight, so we've got a bit of luxurious space. We can all chat a bit. It's quite fun. I think we all cover slightly different angles as well. Okay, and then got a couple more. Chris the Glove's in the chat. Shout out to Chris the Glove. Chris, you're going to go places. You had your head screwed on at boot camp. I'm really interested to see what happens with Chris, because sharp little player, hasn't played a bunch of games yet, but very savvy, asking all the right questions, clearly wants to do well. I think we'll see great things from Chris in the future. Secret missions. Are there any in the new pack where you're thinking secrets are a nailed on cert? That's a good question. What do you boys think?
Oh, God.
I have to remember who my warlord is again.
Right.
We've already discussed. I have no idea who my warlord is.
My warlord is dead turn 3 every time, or I've not done it right.
Yeah, the warlord one is very build specific rather than map specific.
Magnus likes it. Magnus is really, really good at it.
In terms of maps, obviously hidden supplies, having 4 across the middle, is a thing.
If you go second, the end game hold 3 is a very viable option for sure.
Yeah, they've all got 3 across the middle. 1 has 4, right? So
supply drop, obviously it goes, so you can't do it on that one.
Supply drop is bad.
That's the go-to one, I think. That's the most likely. And then if you're an army that's capable of getting battle line into unexpected places, for example, then the one with having battle line in your opponent's deployment and having removed theirs in the middle also definitely has play, but it depends a bit on the army. You need to be mobile, like Grey Knights, for example. If you've got some strikes teleporting around,
because I'm like, well, I've got 2 units of strikes in my list, but generally they are, in an ideal world, the first things to die.
Yeah,
because my paladins and my dread knights and my purifiers are doing the damage. They're the damage dealing units. Meanwhile, my interceptors and strikes are dying over the course of the 4 turns. I've got the 2 assassins now to try and do that, but am I now like, oh, I don't want to throw my strikes away, but actually I'm going to have to. So it is, well, maybe I don't. Who knows? We'll find out this weekend, won't we? But yeah, it's certainly an interesting. But yeah, the obvious answer is that the holding 3 is that's
the big spicy one, because if you're thinking about these primary missions where you're both denying each other a lot, if you can be building for a big 20 endgame swing and getting some endgame swing that gets you up on the primary, having been very, very tightened down, that's got some real play.
On special secret missions, I think no one knows them well enough yet. I mean, I'm sure the WTC guys are hammering that button just to practice it, and that's probably something we need to do.
Rob did beat Ed Watts using one, so I want to shout that out because that's fucking epic.
I was going to use the exact opposite example, which was our dear old Davey went to Spain with Aaron. And
shout out to them as well. Had an amazing time.
I'm not sure the name of the tournament. We did advertise it on our Facebook page. It's an incredible tournament.
Yeah. I'm going to go in the future, I think.
Davey and Aaron went last year. They came again. They went again this year. Aaron managed to go 4-1. Davey didn't have the best day 1 with his Crusher Stampede. I think that'd be fair to say. But he did manage to get in this exciting position where he was like, secret mission, this bad boy. So he chose a secret mission and then proceeded to lose. If he hadn't taken the secret mission, he would have won the game.
Yeah.
And obviously that is less than ideal. So I think there's going to be a lot of stories to begin with about, I thought I was down, and then actually I then tabled them, and I actually would have got a 50 on primary instead. I only got 40 or like whatever.
I think they're strongest when you can feel a tabling coming, but the primary's been low enough that you can then swing to that. I don't think there's many other circumstances where I'd want to be trying to do one, I don't think. But it does depend a bit what you play, right? But
yeah, it feels a bit like if you try and build for the secret missions as well, you end up just building an army that's just quite good at primary. So you don't need it.
just be good at primary, right? Yeah.
Just get good. Come on.
Or have a really chunky, quick warlord if you have one available. It doesn't do you any harm.
What warlord can you give 3-inch deep strikes to with uppy downy?
Drago.
Drago,
if I
Bellicor.
Like that in your backfield last turn.
Commander Farsight in Ret Catcher, Carl, if you're still in. Have you ever done that? Let me know. I bet you have.
Did you see her 3-inch deep strike still?
Maybe in one detachment. But their warlord's always dead real quick. Real quick. No army I play has an alive warlord after round 3, so I don't even think about that one. That's
obviously the Wayleaper goes far, but he's only using one.
Yeah, Wayleaper, I guess, is a good shout, to be fair, because he's got the mobility to get there. Okay. Next up, we have Brainseller, who asks, what's the best way to approach preparation for tournaments on UKTC terrain? How do you plan for deployment, threat ranges, etc., that you can easily put into practice? Chris is a good man for this.
Nice.
How do you plan for a UKTC deployment, Chris?
I could put the terrain out, mate.
Yeah.
Get your models
it's that simple.
Put
it out or get it on TTS, deploy your army, and see how you like the look of it. Is there anything that absolutely cannot be on the board at the start? We'll put it in reserves, whatever else. Think about how am I reaching out. This is actually homework I've been giving to people as they move into Pariah Nexus. All my mentees have had this homework. Deploy your army on these new deployments. Tell me how you're getting to X, Y, Z and doing X, Y, Z in the first turn. It's a very fundamental part of dealing with it. So just don't worry about the other army, because ultimately, and this is an interesting thing to say, Brain. So either you understand the armies you're playing against or you don't, and I can't get you there in a sentence right now. But that's something you're going to gradually acquire That's something you're going to gradually acquire over time. The first thing you can do is understand your own and what it needs. Then you can start adjusting for everything else out there. But yeah, you need to put it down, see what fits, see what doesn't, see what can get where and what that means for your secondaries and your primary. And then also, have a good reserves game as well, because you can bring other things into play via that as well. So I've looked all over these maps and like, where can raiders go? Ooh, where can I put raiders? I can get at least 2 raiders down. That's probably it. And then the rest is bringing things in and working things in after that.
You also don't want to be experimenting in a tournament match.
No, do it before.
I remember doing this last year, just getting out the terrain set, and then just moving the models around, trying them out in different places. Where do I get to turn 1? Where do I get to turn 2?
Yeah,
a bit different with Grey Knights because everywhere. But like Brazier plays Tyranids, so it's like if you've got big bugs, it's about practicing. Where is the place that I can put them so they don't get seen, so I can maximize my movement? Because a classic thing, right, is you've got an L and you shove your monster behind that L so that it can't be seen. Fantastic. Yeah. It's also going nowhere because, it's used all of its move just to get out of alongside the ring. So just by working out angles, like swiveling the model, if you've got a laser pen or whatever, getting those line of sights, just spend like half an hour just trying out a deployment. And
you genuinely learn so many things from doing this. And you learn it about weaknesses for the opponent as well, right? You spend a lot of time deploying, thinking about, okay, actually, I'm in trouble here, X, Y, Z here. That teaches you there are opportunities if you're pushing the reverse on your opponent's side as well. So sometimes just deploying and that being the exercise is incredibly valuable. I've only started doing this in the last 6 months. I have not regretted it for a second, and I've lost a couple of big games because I didn't bother to do that work. I think it's really valuable. Hey, it's also quicker. It's quicker than 3 hours before you Alrighty. Okay, guys. I think that takes us to the end. So all we're going to do now is give a little bit of a loose roundup as far as other content on the channel. Thanks so much for watching us. You can hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Do leave us a comment. Let us know, how are you finding the new UKTC missions? I would love to hear it. You can, of course, sign up and become a YouTube member if you're interested in getting support for us that way. And you can, if you want, seek out some coaching or mentoring from myself, Lewis, or Chris, or indeed Rob Kimpton by signing up that way as well. So get in touch with us if you'd be interested in having that. Moving on beyond that, Chris, give us a little roundup of other things people can go and watch on the channel right now if they want to keep this content train rolling.
Yeah, I've got a few things. A Scourge being a nightmare in your life. I've got the video for you.
Not for Jack Tite, I'll tell you that much.
We probably watched your video.
He didn't need to. They can't scratch sisters. It's so embarrassing.
Slightly different problem. In our member section, we've got a whole host of, I think it's 8 Combat 101 videos filmed on PTS by Ed Watts. And the second one that is out now. It's all about blocking yourself off to do extra things, break the rules of the game if you can. The kids table, our dear little 20-year-olds who are still in nappies, just chat shit basically for
Absolute shit, just
an
complete
hour.
nonsense.
There's a slight rough plan, but it's just like, let's just randomly start talking
Stream
about
of consciousness.
stompers and doing the math hammer. They're just live math hammer. Boom,
Yeah.
that's how good they are.
If you want to find out what witches do into the Avatar of Cain, this is the show for you. Following up on their Pink Horrors Tactica from episode 1. It's unbelievable. Like it's actually beautiful. It's sort of it's surrealist. It's like the Auntie Donna of 40k podcast. It's like, I don't really know how this is connecting up, but I'm having a good time.
I'm enjoying the tree branches going out. And then obviously we've also said as a channel we're going to be really heavily invested in the World Team Championship coming up in a month's time. And we've got Tom, who's obviously doing all the England stuff. We've got Scrivo, who's going to be doing Welsh stuff. And I'm kind of on the Luxembourg side. And so we have got they've all filmed like these little videos, which I'm going to be releasing where you get to meet the team. And we put the first one out today, which is Gilles, who is the team captain for Luxembourg.
I played against and is an absolute gent and a delight. I really like him. He's great.
Yeah, and we'll be firing those out just so you guys can find out about the team who you are going to be rooting for secretly at the WTC this year. But yeah, obviously Bugwatch as always is out. But the thing I'm most excited and also anxious about at the moment is this coming weekend where we were like, we could film some content. We should do like a report of our time at Sheffield. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to film a mockumentary in the teaching profession, a bit like The Office. I feel like it would be amazing to do one in schools. It's never really come about. I was like, well, we could try one for 40k. So I'm busy scripting it at the moment and just writing down ideas. And I have literally no idea how it's going to go. Basically, we're just going to film a whole random bunch of ideas and clips, and it'll be up to me. Can I put it into some sort of storyline? But if you are at Sheffield and you see us walking around with a video camera doing weird things,
get involved.
Or we might, and you start talking to us, I might literally, if you have a Blood Angels army, I do need to talk to someone with a Blood Angels army for literally like a 5-second clip.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be like.
There's going to be all sorts. We've got a bunch of ideas. It's going to be very much not serious. As I say, the goal is Office style mockumentary, but for Warhammer players, we think there's a little bit of a niche there and we're excited to do it, but it could be anything, right? It could be anything at this stage.
And we still don't know. So that's going to be like another part of our weekend whilst trying to win games of Warhammer.
Don't sweat it.
But yeah, easy. But yeah, that'll be out in like, obviously that'll take a long time to sort out. But that's the thing we're most excited about coming out. But yeah, it's content.
There's all sorts, absolutely all sorts. And there will be a Friday night fight night. I believe Jack Chapman's taking over running because Ed's going to be up in Sheffield with us. And once we get that matchup confirmed, it'll be up on our socials as well. So yeah, all sorts coming. Loads out there.
Old World, please.
And of course, there's tons of Old World. There is tons of Old World.
If I don't say
no one can ever definitively end the Old World. Ed is doing just so much work, it actually makes me quite afraid. And I highly recommend the Old World content. Ed convinced me today that I could probably just paint my Seraphon for AOS and then put them on square bases when I needed to for Old World. So I'll hopefully be getting involved a little bit that way as well.
Good man.
That's a 2 birds, 1 stone painting project, which is about all I can muster at this moment in time. So hopefully I'll be getting over that way and getting involved with it. But yeah, I can't stress enough. Ed is working so hard. If you are an Old World fan in any capacity, get over there and have a look at what he's doing. He is putting an enormous shift in right now, really trying to get that channel off the ground, and it looks awesome. It looks amazing. Whoever he's getting his ideas from is a genius, and I think he's really, really done well. So yeah, I think that's it for us. Thank you so much for all tuning in. It's really cool to have so many of you. Chris has got one more point. Go on, Chris.
We hit 5,000 subscribers.
Oh, we didn't even say that.
Probably should have opened with that.
But it was pretty cool that happened.
It was pretty cool because basically the way it worked was for the
we're about process, not outcome, right, Chris?
Yeah, exactly. For the first 3 years of the channel, we had 1,000 subscribers a year. That's how it kind of worked. So our goal this year was to get 2,000 subscribers, which would put us up to 5k. And we managed that in the first half of the year, which is all down to you guys listening. So thank you very much. This was the year we wanted to have a big push and see what we could what we could make of it, and feel like we're doing all
We're
right.
not ruling out 7,000 by the end of the year, but we'll see. I think we might be just off, but that's the goal now. Push on,
Big call.
see if we can go really big.
We've had 100 since Wednesday.
We've had 100 since Wednesday, so it's not too bad. It's not too bad. Just on us to keep it together and keep pushing. I can't work out if WTC is a good or a bad thing for content. You know, it's like on the plus side, everyone's really engaged, but they're really engaged with like one niche thing. So I don't know if that'll help or not, but here's hoping. We're certainly going to be rolling out a lot of WTC content. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. Lovely to have some new faces in the chat tonight and some really poignant questions and some really lovely stuff being said. So we massively appreciate it. We appreciate all of you. We will see you all again really soon. Bye-bye.